Hello, everybody. It's just a minute before 9:30, but I just thought I would take the opportunity to welcome you all to this meeting of Cabinet. It's Wednesday, the 16th of September, and the time is just coming up to 9:30. The meeting is being held under the regulations that came into effect on the 4th of April 2020 in response to the COVID-19 situation. My name is Councillor Lucille Thompson and I'm Chair of Cabinet and Leader of the Council. A few housekeeping reminders to run through as there are new working practices in response to these regulations. First of all, can I ask everyone present in this virtual meeting that you use your microphones, that your microphones remain muted and that your camera is turned off whilst you're not addressing the meeting. This will help reduce background noise and avoid any unintentional disturbances. Please can I also advise that the open parts of this meeting, and we don't have any closed parts this time round, but the open parts of the meeting are being audio recorded and live streamed from the Council's website. And in addition, a video recording of the meeting will be uploaded to the Council's YouTube channel after the meeting. Cabinet members and officers, where appropriate, for each item, please use the chat function of the meeting to indicate that you wish to speak or to raise a point of order or explanation, and I will invite you to speak at the appropriate time. Each member will be invited to speak in turn, therefore I'd encourage all members to keep your contributions as clear and concise as possible. When speaking and referring to agenda papers, please make sure that you reference the page or paragraph number. Thank you. Please note that the duration of this virtual meeting is 2 hours and any business not conducted after this time will be deferred to an alternative date or the next meeting. Finally, if Cabinet members wish to leave the meeting at any point, could they please make themselves known to me through the chat function? I will then announce to the meeting that you are to leave the meeting. So can I please ask the Democratic Services Officer, please, to undertake a roll call of members of Cabinet to confirm who is present this morning. David.
Thank you, Leader. I'll just do a roll call of the Cabinet members. Councillor Thompson?
Yes, present.
Councillor Lerney?
Present.
Councillor Murphy?
Present.
Councillor Porter?
Present.
Councillor Prince?
Present.
Councillor Todd?
Present.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
They didn't call my name. Actually, I am present.
Beg your pardon, Councillor Cutler? Present.
Yes, I'm present.
Thank you. Apologies for absence.
Thank you, Leader. Apologies for absence have been received from Councillor Ferguson and also Monica Gill, the attached representative. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. Membership of Cabinet committees, item 2 on the agenda. First up is the Carroll Centre Board of Trustees. Councillor Jamie Scott has stepped down from that appointment, so we now have a vacancy to fill. Have we any nominations?
Thank you, Leader. Yes, we received from the Liberal Democrat group Councillor Eleanor Bell.
Are there any further nominations? Councillor Horrell, you've got your hand up.
I have. Good morning, Councillor Thompson. Thank you. Yes, I'd like to nominate Councillor Fiona Mather. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you for that.
That requires a vote, so I wonder whether you could
okay,
do the necessary.
Thank you, Leader. I'll just run through the members of Cabinet again and please indicate if you are in favour of Councillor Mather first. Councillor Thompson?
Against.
Councillor Lerney?
Against.
Councillor Murphy?
Against.
Councillor Porter?
Against.
Councillor Prince?
Against.
Councillor Todd?
Against.
Councillor Cutler.
Against.
Okay, to be complete, I will now run through the names again with the nomination of Councillor Eleanor Bell. So, Councillor Eleanor Bell, please can I just run through again? Councillor Thompson.
4.
Councillor Lerney.
4.
Councillor Murphy.
4.
Councillor Porter.
4.
Councillor Prince.
4.
Councillor Todd.
4.
Councillor Cutler.
4.
Many thanks. So Councillor Bell is nominated as the Carroll Centre representative until May 2022. Many thanks.
Thank you very much. We've also got a couple of changes to outside appointments for the year coming up, as we've had a couple of changes in cabinet members, and I would like to appoint Councillor Murphy to replace Councillor Ferguson as the council's representative on WINAC. That's the first one. And Councillor Murphy to replace Councillor Ferguson as the council's deputy representative on Project Integra Management Board. They are both cabinet member appointments only. I'm just, for the minutes, really making those amendments to our representatives. Thank you. Item number 3 is disclosure of interests, and can I ask if anyone in Cabinet has any interest to declare? Councillor Porter?
It's a personal interest, but I don't think that the membership of the County Council is a consideration today.
Okay, thank you very much.
I've just sort of likewise say that the County Council is a personal interest, but I don't think it relates to anything on the agenda.
Thank you very much. Okay, that item seems to be done. Item number 4 is to note any requests from councillors who wish to speak, and I do have quite a long list of them to speak on the agenda items coming up before us, and I'm assuming you would like to speak after the presentation of the reports on those agenda items.
Yes, thank you.
Okay, thank you. We now come to item number 5, public participation, and I have one member of the public who has asked to speak, and that is Mr. Peter Richards, who is from the Winchester Wine Festival. So Mr. Richards, would you like to come on screen and unmute your microphone and address us, please?
Hello, can you hear me, Councillor?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Wonderful. Well, good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for having me. My name is Peter Richards. I'm a Master of Wine, writer and broadcaster, and proud Winchester resident. Also co-founder of the annual Wine Festival Winchester, which takes place every November in the Guildhall. Some of you may well know it. And it's the future of the Guildhall I'd like to talk about. Over the last 6 years, our festival has grown into an event with not only national but also international visibility. It regularly sells out. We have 1,500 people through the doors, tasting hundreds of wines, foods and spirits. We work with about 40 different exhibitors every year, 30 different sponsors. We also employ logistics and other teams. It's a big tent, and intentionally so. We're very proud to have brought thousands of people into Winchester and the Guildhall from a notably high quality demographic, boosting local business, commerce and revenue as a result. Now, I and my team fully recognise the difficulties the Cabinet and Council are facing at the moment and the need for action as a result. But having read the proposed plans for the change in use of the Guildhall, I sort of felt compelled to speak not just on behalf of our festival, but also other large-scale events that use what the documentation call, quite rightly, an iconic building, because we are extremely concerned about the impact that a significant change in use of the Guildhall will have on events and on the city longer term. The more far-reaching proposals could mean the end of our festival as we know it. We'll struggle to hold it anywhere else. If we're told that our 2021 event can't happen, for example, that would be a huge blow for us at a time when we, like so many other events, need support more than ever. As I speak, we're investing in our 2020 events to take it online. This will be a lost live for us, but we're prepared to take the hit just to keep the festival going, to support our festival goers, exhibitors and sponsors with a view to returning to the Guildhall as soon as we can. In recent years, as you know, the Guildhall team have done an amazing job attracting top quality events. This has seen Winchester's stock rise considerably on a national level, and if this were to be undermined by a short-term decision that would make booking and holding events at the Guildhall difficult or impossible, that will have a hugely detrimental effect on us and the city. So we would request that whatever the short-term future of the Guildhall, accommodate event, the local community and position Winchester as a key UK destination. The future is uncertain, as we know. Events have been one of the hardest hit of all sectors, and any support we can get, especially regarding venues like the Guildhall, retaining the flexibility to accommodate us will be vital for our survival in the longer term. So if history teaches us anything, it's that things will get back to normal eventually. Let's not throw the bathwater. It will mean a huge amount to business events and people's lives here in Winchester and beyond. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Mr. Richards. We've got a slight technical problem here in that our screen has packed up. I don't know whether other members of Cabinet hear? No?
Yes, we can.
Yes.
Oh, you can.
Yes, we
Okay.
can hear.
Okay.
And we could hear Mr. Richards.
Yes, that's good. Okay, thank you very much. Well, we're just sorting out our screen here, but oh, there we are. You're all back. Thank you, Mr. Richards, for that contribution. I mean, as you know, the government have now decided that we can only hold events of up to 6 people, even indoors. So the situation at the moment is extremely challenging. Recognise what you say about the Guildhall, and it's not a decision that we're taking lightly, but obviously council is in severe financial difficulty at the moment, and unfortunately you know, that forms part of the decision that we have to take today. But thank you for your contribution. We recognise that the Wine Festival is hugely important to Winchester. I've certainly been and enjoyed the event several times over the last few years, and I know other councillors have too. So and we look forward to a time when we can all meet again at such an event. So thank you very much. Now, you can either stay on the call and listen to the debate that will take place shortly, or if you don't want to do that, obviously you can listen at leisure. But anyway, thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you. Okay, I'm just getting back to the agenda after that blip. Item 6 is leader and cabinet member announcements. I'm not aware that we have any announcements to make. I don't think there are any from cabinet members. Am I correct? Okay, I'm not seeing any hands up, so we'll move swiftly on to the first item on the proper agenda, as it were, item 7. Revised General Fund Budget 2021, and it's pages 5 to 40 on the agenda pack. So can I ask Councillor Cutler to introduce the paper, please?
Thank you, Leader. CAB 3256, the Revised General Fund Budget. This paper sets out the detail of the Revised General Fund Budget, which will be recommended to Council for approval later this month. In fact, next week. The budget details are widely discussed in the budget briefing on the 23rd of July, and whilst we continue to monitor the situation, particularly parking and rent receipts from commercial properties, the base case remains broadly as we discussed in the briefing on the 23rd of July. The paper also shows the indicative figures for the medium-term financial strategy, which of course we've already started working on for next year's budget. In addition to the budget proposals, this paper makes recommendations that the Guildhall remains closed. I'm wondering if you can all hear me, since I can keep losing all of your pictures. Strange things are happening. Can you indicate if you can still hear?
We can hear.
I can hear everything.
We can hear you.
Good,
Yeah,
good.
we can hear you.
Yes.
So my screen is doing odd things. So yeah. So in addition to the budget proposals, this paper makes recommendations that the Guildhall remains closed to the general public hire for the next 12 months, but that a venue-only service is maintained. This will put 13 Guildhall staff at risk of redundancy. It's anticipated that 2 staff will be retained to manage the requirement for council and ongoing venue-only services. In answer to Mr. Richards' comments, whilst we would look to close for 12 months, obviously we would within the next few months start looking at how we can reopen towards the end of next year. This decision will help to stand mounting additional losses. The building already loses money and was budgeted to lose money, but that loss could more than double if we continued as we are. The paper also recommends that virtual meetings of the council continued for the remainder of the municipal year, but we would review this on a quarterly basis. Therefore, next review would be in December. Currently, it would be impossible to return to in-person meetings for several reasons: limited spaces available big enough for appropriate distancing, technical limitations to hybrid meetings, so that vulnerable members and officers could attend virtually, and of course a legal limit of 6 people gathering indoors. It would be unhelpful if the council set a bad example on this. All in all, we feel that ruling out return before Christmas gives everyone certainty. So the paper recommends both the virtual meetings and the closure of the Guildhall, and it asks Cabinet to recommend to Council the General Fund budget, the revised General Fund budget and the revised capital programme, along with also a recommendation to Council that the leader should write to all the bodies that have been so supportive during the epidemic and during the last 6 months. So therefore I commend this paper to Cabinet.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cutler.
I'm getting echoes like nobody's business.
We were having difficulty with the camera this end. Anyway, we've now got someone's phone, so that's fine. Anyway, thank you very much, Councillor Cutler. Could I now? We have a number of councillors who have registered.
You're muted.
You're muted, Chair.
We can hear nothing, Lucille.
Nothing. So you're muted, or so I suggest one of the two methods of access in the room is unmuted. We can't hear you. Still muted.
Lucille, I'm afraid we can't hear anything.
Still muted. Still muted.
Somebody hold a bit of paper up. Martin, hold a bit of paper up saying we can't hear you.
Told her in so many ways.
It's gone out through chat as well.
Maybe she's going to read it though.
Certainly the officers read it.
There's an officer in the room reading it.
That's it. Yeah.
Yes. Can you hear me now?
Better. Okay. Yeah, we can hear you now.
Oh, brilliant. Okay. We're still having technical issues here, and I can't. Well, I have got a screen, but it's not the one in front of me, as it were. Right, Councillor Miller, are you there? And can you make your contribution, please?
Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Yes.
Good. Thank you very much for the opportunity to speak this morning. The budget paper proposes the effective mothballing of the Guildhall for the foreseeable future, but many of the costs will still be incurred, so the savings will be very limited. Part of the cost of a depreciation of the assets, and this will still be in the region of £200,000, and this will still be incurred. The heating will still have to be used, and it will need to be insured. Rates, fire alarms will still need to be tested, so will the extinguishers and items such as the lift. It seems the toilets will still have to be open, as I believe they are used by TIC, and presumably the SEE are still using the offices upstairs. So again, toilets will still need to be open, and therefore will have costs of cleaning, water, etc. The building's maintenance will still have to be undertaken, as such things as the air conditioning services, the cleaning, the guttering, coping with the damp. Surely at a time of saying winter is open to business, this is the wrong time to close the Guildhall. Should we not be seeking more bookings and rearranging events and looking for new weddings in the future that could use the King Charles room even in the current situation? Also, the tourists like to walk after the TIC or into the building and walk around and see the many fantastic displays. So you're making the Windsor less attractive to tourists. What will happen to Abbey House without the Guildhall staff to look after it? I feel this is a panic proposal that's not being thought through properly, and is an extremely bad way to treat the hard-working and dedicated staff. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Miller. Can I now call on Councillor Lumby, please?
Thank you, Leader. Have I appeared, and do I need to use the power of mind to get through this, or is it all right?
Well, we can certainly hear you, and you have appeared.
Excellent. Okay, that's good news. Thank you. So thank you again for the opportunity to address Cabinet today. I have a question in relation to the Marchioness of Winchester bequest in relation to Guildhall. I understand that this was made to enable maintenance around 10 years ago, but was made on the basis that the Guildhall was kept open for the public. I do also understand that this was raised at Scrutiny Committee last week, but unfortunately I was away then, cycling across the north of England, mostly in rain. I've got an echo. Is that okay? Yeah. Shall I keep going? Sorry, can I keep going? The references to Scrutiny Committee was referred to in brief terms at paragraph 6.4b on page 9. However, other than stating that it was clarified that these proposals do not conflict with the requirements of the request, no details are provided. The proposals for the Guildhall themselves are covered on pages 17 to 19 at paragraph 18. Again, no details of the bequest or its requirements are given. Now, as a councillor and as a lawyer, I will be concerned at any proposal that might place the council in breach of any commitments it has made, whether generally or in a narrow and specific way. Please can I therefore ask what analysis had been done on this and by whom? In addition, please can I ask that the relevant terms of the bequest and of any advice given be shared with members or, at the very least, myself and anyone else who requests it. Finally, please can this occur before any final decision on closure or redundancies is made. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I now call on Councillor Reid?
Thank you, Leader, for the opportunity to speak. I've left the main part to obviously my two colleagues, My immediate concern when I read the report and looking at page 18.2 regarding the Guildhall itself, some years ago, the security and cleaning of Abbey House was handed over to the Guildhall staff. How will Abbey House be affected for its use as the Mayor's official residence in the near future? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Next on my list is Councillor Horrell.
Good morning, and thank you for allowing me to address Cabinet this morning. And thank you for the report to Councillor Cutler and the finance team updating us on the revised budget. I know that that has been quite a task. I'd like to focus my comments this morning on Appendix 3, the capital budget. You have removed the capital funding for the replacement surgery, which is a key facility for over 17,000 residents who are patients of the current St Clement's facility. And we know this is consistent with the previous paper you've published, but we are yet to see that deal done, and the delay is certainly causing anxiety to residents. Is this your intent, and why are we not agreeing the contract with the developer? Can the portfolio holder update us on the state of play? Have you received tenders? Have you contracted a provider to build the new surgery? And when can we expect progress? We cannot support the capital budget being taken out of the plan without the assurances and the guarantees that we will be delivering this essential facility in the future. One other question relates to St Clement's is, are there actions in hand to purchase the current St Clement's building that is in the Winchester regeneration facility? Can the portfolio holder also share with us his intention re the SAP reduction for Central Winchester? What are you not going to do, which is detailed in Appendix 3? You've also rather raided the HRA account, and I made this point at scrutiny the other evening. You've taken money out of the fire safety provision, and although rolled some of that forward, do we really want to deprioritise fire safety? Can the portfolio holder please guarantee that any works that are needed to protect the tenants will be conducted in this financial year, if required? And can you assure us that the reduction of the 1.8 million in the repairs budget for our housing stock is a result of COVID restrictions and our inability to get the work done during lockdown, or is there a revision of priorities that we have set? What specifically will not be done that we plan to action? I know some of these points were made and the issues raised through the scrutiny detailed in this report, but we haven't seen any specific agreement or actions as they relate to a number of these points. But I'd welcome the opportunity to receive some comments from the portfolio holder. Thank you, Councillor Thompson, for allowing me to speak.
Thank you, Councillor Horrell. Next on my list is Councillor Pearson.
Thank you, Leader. I shall go ahead. Thank you for allowing me to speak. I just hope the IT section also gets continuation. I really do feel for you with the problems you're having at that end. So it certainly doesn't seem to be for many of the members. However, I've got one comment and a number of questions, if I may. The first comment regards paragraph 7.1, where you're referring to the reduction of carbon emissions from council buildings. Now, is that balanced by the reduction of income from the Guildhall, particularly, but also, of course, to a degree from River Park, although that's not separate budget? The other query regarding 7.1 is the comment you make about the reduction of mileage travel for officers, which is understandable in the circumstances, but that's a bit of an illusion. my experience of travelling the roads in Winchester District over the last 3 or 4 weeks is that the traffic actually at present is more than it was before COVID. So I'm not quite sure whether that actually is a reality in any carbon saving from travel to work, other than from those officers who no longer have to come into work. But bear in mind, apparently there are also other office workers in Winchester who are not travelling into work as well. So I'm not quite sure whether the phrasing in that paragraph is the one you want to pass on. Now, my queries that I may ask, and I'll make these quicker than I'm saying at the moment, relates again to Appendix 3. The first one, the budget line for the garden waste bins. Regarding that, I presume those garden waste bins are on the way, particularly if the plans that Councillor Todd published, in that they expect those bins to be delivered from December, or it has been delayed. Regarding that, so far there's been no publicity recently to residents' homes about the process necessary for licensing. Yes, I know it's on the web page, but really you have to contact the residents themselves directly, but not everybody pours over the council website to see fine details. Or are we expecting another situation where something is happening and the residents don't know what is happening? So that green waste, publicity, bins and so on. The next one regards open space. It seems that one section of Appendix 3 seems to have removed any budgeting, and that's the first page of Appendix 3, because there's no figures along that line. And another section, which I can't see immediately now, seems to mention open spaces as though there is some money. Now, is that an error or is it deliberate? I presume, and exactly what is that money going to be spent on? Next question is regarding the energy management projects. You're making savings by a lot of the council buildings being closed at present. So what is this money going to be spent on? I noticed there's been no change in that budget line of £250,000 a year. Councillor Reid has asked the question about Abbey House. I'm of equal concern, as I imagine are other members of the mayoralty as well. Again, also, if a staff in the Guildhall, whether Abbey House or the direct Guildhall staff, are plans on hand regarding 2P and redundancy, all this sort of thing on hand, to make sure that those staff, if they are going to be made redundant, and if you're saying that building is going to be closed up until the end of next year, I think Councillor Cutler said, that is staggering length of time. There's going to be a fair amount of deterioration in that building because of lack of use, just as there has been with Abbey House. So I'm glad to see there is a budget line still for Abbey House maintenance, or is that also going to be scrubbed because of lack of use? Bearing in mind that both of these are listed buildings and we have an obligation to maintain those listed buildings. Thank you very much, Leader, for listening to me. I hope I do get some answers to those questions. I know the devil is always in the detail, as ever the case. If you can't give me a direct answer, please direct me to where we can find the answers to those questions. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor Pearson. You've given us a whole list of questions there, and I have been able to note some of them down. My final speaker here is Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you very much, Leader. Let me just only a few comments, a question. I'm hoping that the Cabinet will be able to acknowledge that with this very dire financial situation, that the measures having to be taken, while not welcome, at least you have the options to deal with them in the short term. and that could only be impossible because of the very extensive set of reserves which had been built up by the Conservative administration before you, and now you are able to use those for to shore up the revenue budget. The key point about spending capital on any project is that it can only be used once, and so when you start using your reserves for the revenue budget, they can only be used in the 1 year. However, on page 17, you list the 4 projects which are going to be affected by the changes to the capital budget. And as far as I can tell, it's only the coach park of those 4 which is going to be cut completely. The other 3 are delayed, or other funds within the reserve domain are going to feed into the keeping the other 3 projects going, which seems to me, but actually there is no saving being made apart from stopping the coach park. So this seems to be like a smoke and mirrors saving, bringing forward reserves to pay for revenue budget, which really just means that by spending the reserves, we're bringing forward the time when we will have to borrow money to spend on the capital projects. So perhaps the portfolio holder can reassure me that the projects listed in on page 17 of the report will stop, that we won't have a housing company, that we will not demolish the river park, or does it mean that we are going to borrow money for all intents and purposes to fund the revenue budget for this year? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Godfrey. Members of Cabinet, a lot of questions have been posed to us here. I know that Councillor Porter has had her hand up, so I wonder whether she'd like to come in here.
Thank you. I was just going to ask a question related to the Guildhall, which was really, can we know how many events have had to be cancelled over the last few months, sometimes at extremely short notice, because of the current COVID restrictions?
Mr. Botham, do you have an answer to that? I don't know whether that's whether you're the correct person, or would it be Mr. Bradfield? Not sure. Who have we got?
Chair, yeah, sorry, I'm happy to respond. We don't have the specific numbers to hand on cancellations. I can certainly get those to Councillor Porter. I mean, I think the key point there is that demand has dropped very, very significantly. So whilst there are still some events that would like to continue, and we are in conversation with them about how they could continue on a venue only basis, demand is significantly reduced. So that goes back to some of the comments that were made by members and Councillor Miller earlier around those costs. All of that analysis has been done in great detail. We are projecting that to operate the Guildhall next year with that with the ongoing reduced demand because of the government restrictions, will increase the cost of the council of operating the Guildhall to over £700,000. By operating on a venue-only basis and not retaining a large events team, which will have very little to do because there just simply aren't the number of events coming forward for them to support, the net operating cost of the council will be around £200,000. There's been a lot of talk about the closure and mothballing of the Guildhall, and I just wanted to clarify the fact that that isn't the proposal. The proposal is to close it to general public hire. But where an event can support itself, then we would very much want that to happen, and that's the whole proposal is around maintaining the facility as a community asset. It's there's been talk also about the bequest. If I could just quickly cover that one.
Yes, please.
Yeah, the BAPSI bequest was a donation to the city, nothing to do with the Guildhall. It was a donation to the city to develop a community asset. Now, some years ago, the council determined to use that money to upgrade the Guildhall, and the conditions of the bequest were recognised in the development of the BAPSI room and some of the signage and the paintings that were put up in the BAPSI room. Well, maintaining it as a venue-only basis still means it's a community asset of everybody, so it doesn't challenge that bequest at all. What the legal team are of course looking at that in fine detail, and I can confirm that as Councillor Lumby has said, can you see the detail of the bequest? Well, yes, we can share that with members, but who are interested to see it. But it does make no reference at all to the Guildhall itself. It's that was covered obviously in previous cabinet papers. But just wanted to make the point: it isn't mothballing. It is a case of still making use of the facility. What we're talking about is we cannot sustain a large events team when there aren't the events coming forward for them to support. They would eventually, effectively, we would have a large team being held for a small number of events, which simply isn't sustainable for the council. So.
Mr. Botham, could I also ask, a number of mentions have been made of Abbey House and the and any possible knock-on effect. I just wonder whether you could make some comments on that, because certainly there is no proposal to restrict Abbey House in any way, as far as I'm aware.
We don't consider this proposal affects the operation of Abbey House. Certainly the retained staff and the council's estates team will continue to manage Abbey House in its current form.
Thank you very much. Thank you. I think that's helpful. Councillor Todd, I believe you've got your hand up.
Yes, Leader. Unfortunately, I just need to flag to you that I need to go. I have a work meeting which I need to attend, or rather, I needed to attend 11 minutes ago. But there were 2 points that were raised that I thought it would be helpful to answer by Councillor Pearson that sit within my portfolio area. The first one relates to traffic. We are getting regular updates from the County Council on traffic levels in Winchester compared to Hampshire and the country as a whole, and compared to pre-COVID levels. And the latest figures I've seen up until September the 2nd show that our traffic overall is at between 74 and 85% of pre-COVID traffic as measured in the first week of February. That said, what we have seen is that traffic patterns have changed quite dramatically. There's a lot less commuting and there's less bus use. And so it would not surprise me at all if there are times of day when it's at pre-COVID levels. He also had a question about the recycling bins and the publicity associated. So 2 days ago, every resident in the district, or every household in the district, was posted a flyer about the new plans for garden waste bins alongside their new recycling calendar. The timing is, as previously communicated, at the time of the introduction of the new contract in February, which we agreed to delay because of COVID delays to the new trucks. So it was an unavoidable delay. There is a project board which is meeting, I think, weekly, which I chair, might be fortnightly, it was weekly, which has very detailed plans in place, which will ensure that the bins are delivered on time. So bins are a fairly generic product and relatively easy to get hold of. One final thought: there was a point that Councillor Godfrey mentioned about the state of the council's finances at the time that they lost control. I think it's important that the Conservatives are not so complacent about their management of the council's finances. Let's not forget that the last medium-term financial strategy that they published had a £19 million hole in it, and that there was no plan to address that hole. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Todd. And so I guess you'll be leaving the meeting now. Thank you very much for your contribution. Thank you. Are there any other Cabinet members who wish to raise a question either on the paper or respond to any of the councillors' questions that have been brought up? No, I'm not seeing any. Councillor Lerney.
Thank you, Leader. I just wanted to respond to Councillor Horrell's comments. As she said, they were brought up in scrutiny and were responded to then. There has been no revision of priorities. I would like to repeat that. However, COVID has led to inevitable delays in a number of our programmes and projects, delays which cannot all be clawed back. And it has been necessary to reprofile expenditure, but that doesn't mean that there's anything that we plan to do within housing that we're now not doing. The fire safety work in particular will be proceeding. That is a priority, but within there are items of work which are more important than others, some of which are quite difficult to progress quickly simply because throughout the country, local authorities and private landlords are carrying on exactly this kind of work. You know, there was a shortage of fire doors even before COVID, and I don't believe that the situation has improved now, but it is still very high priority for us. I'd also like to go back to the capital funding for the surgery. That has disappeared as we no longer need it because we are progressing with private investment in that facility. I'm pleased to be able to say that we have had a number of bids in for that surgery, and if Councillor Horrell had read the forward plan, she would have spotted that that is due to come back to Cabinet next month. So there will be more information coming forward on that, and I think we'll all be very pleased that we will make progress in that particular area, and we can reassure residents about that. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lerney. Any further questions, or are we happy to go into debate? No further questions, so I think debate. Councillor Cutler.
Thank you, Leader. It strikes me that most of the questions that we've received are around the Guildhall closure, which I think Richard Botham has answered quite clearly. Councillor Godfrey talks about us using reserves. In fact, this budget does not use our reserves, but I find it strange that he should talk about the previous administration creating the healthy situation when we were so roundly criticised back in February by him for actually increasing the reserves over the next 2 years, which if we hadn't had COVID might have been a criticism, but it was clear that we were moving into quite a turbulent time with Brexit and COVID, and if we had not taken the decisions back in February, it would have been far more difficult to put in place this emergency budget. So I think he misunderstood this particular budget in that we have not raided the reserves as such, but it is clear that if we have over £5 million deficit one way or another, the likelihood is that we would move to having to borrow for capital projects more quickly. I don't think there's any way of getting around that. But that will all be dealt with when we look at next year's budget and the medium-term financial strategy. So in terms of the budget, I think we've got the balance about right. There's been also quite a lot of comment on Appendix 3, the capital programme. One thing I would say is that our capital programme is realistic. In the past, capital programme has had lots of wish list things on it, and then most years a large underspend, which then sort of is carried over to the following year. So I think we're being more realistic about those things that could not be done this year, to create a balanced budget that we will commend to council. In terms of the other two main elements of the recommendations, the Guildhall closure, we are talking about a closure to of the venue as it is, but as Mr. Botham has pointed out, it will still be open on a venue only basis, and it will still be, there will still be 2 staff on the maintenance side of things. It will save considerable sums, which, given the context of the budget we've just been talking about, is very important to do. It will also give us time in the new year to start thinking about how we use the Guildhall at the end of that 12-month period, as it becomes clear as we come out of the pandemic. I've heard no comments from anybody in terms of the virtual meeting side of things. Unfortunate that the glitches earlier did point out some of the continuing difficulties, but we have become well practiced and function. I believe most of our committees meetings are functioning very well under this system. It is to provide certainty through to Christmas that we recommend that virtual meetings continue. So I'll leave it there, Leader, and hope that the Cabinet will pass the recommendations.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cutler. Councillor Porter, you've got your hand up, and then followed by Councillor Lerney.
Yes, thank you. I was reassured by Mr. Botham's answer. That was my understanding, that the Guildhall would remain open for events if people wanted to supply their own logistics for those events. So I wouldn't have been very supportive of this if that wasn't the case. A living building is much easier to keep going than a closed building, but at the moment so many people are cancelling events. It makes life very difficult, and it must be very boring if you're used to preparing events and actually you're sitting there with nothing to do. So I think that's a practical problem. The second aspect of this is that we've been discussing meetings. We've had so many people meeting us online, and last night was an example of taxi drivers turning up, and they could turn up to licensing to talk, even though they wouldn't perhaps normally have felt to come into the imposing building of the Guildhall to have those meetings. So I think actually there is an enabling aspect to this online presentation rather than the way in which we do it in a building. However, I'm also pleased that what it does mean is that whatever the current restrictions are, and whether it's 6 or 8 or 25 or 30, it does mean the public can always attend the meetings. And so actually I think it's an enabling point at the moment rather than a disabling point. And I'm very happy to support the principle of remaining online but reviewing it every 3 months according to how this country's health is going.
Thank you very much, Councillor Porter. Councillor Lerney.
Thank you, Leader. I would like to thank Councillor Cutler and the officers for all the hard work that's gone into this, because this doesn't just represent, you know, a few weeks' work. This represents 6 months' work in trying to bring the council back on track. And I think the fact that there is only one decision that's being made in this paper that is really controversial is a credit to how well they've done in dealing with the finances generally. Of course, the change in the Guildhall is a very difficult decision to make, but given the scale of the savings, I think it's the only decision the council could take. And I think it's a shame that we haven't had more support in making those difficult decisions from the opposition. I think it's important to highlight that there will be many more difficult decisions in the months to come, particularly going into the budget next year. The current situation with regards to COVID is that it's likely to be many months, if not several years before we're actually back to normal, and we have to recognise that now. We have to take decisions early rather than pushing them back later and later. And I think there'll be a lot of conversations to be had about what we do going forward. But I'm feeling that right now we have the situation under control, but we need to keep on top of it and keep making those difficult decisions.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lerney, and thank you to all who've made contributions to this debate. As Councillor Lerney's just said, it's been 6 months in the making, bringing this report together and actually getting the council's finances back on track in an extremely difficult and challenging financial situation at the moment. And again, we're not expecting COVID to go away anytime soon. In fact, Chris Whitty, the government's medical officer, has admitted that, you know, we're going to be in this situation for many months to come. So there are going to be further difficult decisions to make, and we would look to the opposition to support us in making those difficult decisions, because they're not made lightly. So that said, if we could move to the recommendations, please, on page 5 and 6 of the agenda pack. Cabinet, are we agreed?
Agreed.
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 Thank you very much. Those recommendations are agreed. Thank you to everyone who made contributions. Now moving to agenda item number 8, which is the consultation on changes to the council tax reduction scheme. And this is a paper before you. It's an extremely lengthy paper, but it's basically to approve the consultation, approve the paper to go out to consultation, basically. Councillor Cutler, would you like to introduce the paper, please?
Thank you, Leader. Cabinet, you will know that council tax reduction was introduced in 2013 and placed a duty on the billing authorities to create a council tax reduction scheme for working age applicants. Winchester introduced a very generous means tested scheme that gives up to 100% reduction to council tax liability. The council is required to review the scheme annually and must consult public stakeholders and other major precepting authorities if the scheme is to be significantly amended. With the introduction of universal credit, the scheme has become administratively very time consuming and therefore very costly to the council. And it's also made claimants reluctant to make a prompt application, leading to a loss of entitlements. Most local authorities have moved to a simplified banding system, and we now propose that Winchester City Council should do the same. The Revenue and Benefits team have worked very hard over the last few months to develop this proposal, which will replace the means tested scheme with a simple income grid model. Now, the income grid had been designed to minimise the number of claimants that would lose out on the scheme. There are several thousand on the scheme, and the team have worked very hard to produce a grid, that absolutely minimised the number of people that would be disadvantaged by a new process. And it also proposed the a discretionary exceptional hardship fund be created to help those few that would be disadvantaged by the new scheme. Following discussions at scrutiny and with members, there was some concern that because the grid had been made to fit, to a certain extent, the profile of the applicant, those currently receiving, that it was not a particularly logical grid. And there was a feeling that we should go back and have another look. So the supplementary paper is an alternative grid that actually is more rational in the ranges within the grid, and we've actually, the team worked hard in the last week to remodel this, and it appears to provide a similar level of very low level of those that would be disadvantaged by the scheme. So therefore I recommend that we replace the table on page 53 with the table on the supplementary agenda. So Cabinet are asked to approve this as a statutory consultation. The team will continue to model the best way of delivering this, and obviously will react to the responses to the consultation before a final proposal comes to Cabinet and to Council. So I welcome further questions from Cabinet on this.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cutler. And yes, I'm glad you made reference to the supplementary agenda item with the new revised banding table. So I have two councillors who would like to speak on this item. The first one up is Councillor Godfrey.
Thank you, Madam Chairman. Just trying to do it all on one screen. I'm grateful for acknowledgement from Councillor Cutler for the acknowledgement of the existing council tax reduction scheme as being generous. I believe that the paper itself identifies it as the best scheme in the country, and we always felt it was because of the incentives to encourage the most vulnerable in our society to seek work and to support them financially through this CTR scheme, where at all possible, extending the scope of support by disregarding their income from raising it from £5 a week to £75 a week when I was last running the finances of the City Council. So I'm grateful for acknowledgement of that, and I'm also quite defensive of changes to a scheme which was so well received by all those who benefited from it. I have not had the opportunity to be fully briefed on this, but the scheme which has been introduced will be a significant change for claimants. I think the idea of making it simpler for them to receive the benefit and for that to be automatically backdated is very welcome. I'm less certain about the banding, which seems to complicate the matter for the claimant, providing cliff edges in which people will suddenly have a marked loss of income as their circumstances improve. And in the paper, it refers to a reduced amount of disregard, so there's less incentive for claimants of working age to seek employment. So I think that's I'm less comfortable with those aspects. I'm sure that it will be simpler for the officers to run. I'm only sure of that because it says so in the report. It's very difficult to see how the consultation will come to the any conclusion that makes it a better scheme or a worse scheme, because it is very hard to describe what is still a very complicated scheme in a way that the public will be able to give a clear and concise response. Having said that, I just looked up the current scheme, and the guidance on that runs to 130 pages. So I can't say that any change will lead to a cut in red tape. But I do hope it will, and I wish for a scheme and a change as well, subject to any feedback we get during the consultation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Godfrey. I now call on Councillor Horrell.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to address Cabinet again on this important issue. And I wanted to reiterate our thanks to officers for this document and the efforts that has been put into developing the new approach. We do understand the significance of it and the efforts that have been made. And also thank you to Councillor Cutler for the amended table. I think that was a good discussion the other evening regarding the paper that came to scrutiny, and it's really helpful that you have tabled an alternative today. So I think that's exceptionally helpful. I'm conscious of the earlier discussion about finances and just wanted to guarantee with you, Councillor Cutler, that we will, despite those difficult financial circumstances, make sure that those who are disadvantaged do have that fund available to them to support them if they're in desperate need. We also discussed, and I think just the nature of this, and I know this is a consultation, but the documentation and the whole process is quite onerous, and that we should probably use our corporate resources that we already have to ensure that the documents are readily understood and as easy as possible to complete. And we discussed the other day the appeals document and the opportunity perhaps to improve that, and your officers were keen to undertake that opportunity to enhance it if we can, and using perhaps our reader panel that already exists is a good opportunity to do that. I just wanted to feedback too on consultation more generally. This is obviously an important consultation, and some of the feedback recently on consultations in other areas are that they sort of tick a box, but they're obviously not quite what people have been expecting, and indeed because of the circumstances in which we exist, are we using the technologies available to us to our very best? We've personally as councillors experienced some very good briefings using some excellent technology. We haven't necessarily rolled that out to our public engagements with our residents, and I suppose my challenge is, are we using the best tools for the consultation process that we can access on something that's so crucial? I welcome the comment in the report from scrutiny, and I think you are happy with that, to review this process a year from now to ensure that we are in good order and that it is working as you had anticipated. There are often small things that you need to amend, and I think the commitment to do that would be most welcome by all of us. And I hope that the other recommendations that were in the scrutiny input to this paper, over and above some that we have already discussed this morning, can be taken into account. So I thank you for your time to raise these points with you this morning, and as I say, appreciate the efforts that have gone into something that is so crucial and actually welcomed, I think, as something that Winchester City Council does very well in the broader context of local government. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Horrell. Members of Cabinet, do you have any questions on the paper? No, I'm not seeing anyone's hand up. Any debate? Councillor Cutler?
Would you like me to, given that there doesn't appear to be any debate, to just sum up and
Yes.
look at some of those questions?
Yes, please.
From the reality is that this is, you know, we have to put a consultation out for this significant change. The team have worked very hard on it. We've effectively had some pre-consultation in terms of the comments at scrutiny, and have worked. The team worked very hard to produce yet another grid, but that shouldn't be seen as the final. This is a consultation. Now, the problem, I think, with this particular consultation is that it is important to get the input from the precepting authorities, and for the precepting authorities, it is the very technical aspect of the consultation that it needs to be in that sort of detail. So I take the point that it's actually quite a difficult consultation perhaps for the general public, and we will look at how we make sure that there is an ability for the public to understand and comment on it. Councillor Horrell did ask about whether we could guarantee that the funding will be available. There are no plans to reduce the generosity of this scheme. The idea is to try to keep the cost broadly similar while reducing the huge cost that it is building in terms of the administration of it. Terry pointed out to me that it can take several hours on each application. When you have several thousand, that is a big resource implication. Thank you to Councillor Horrell and to Councillor Godfrey for their support on this. As I said in my introduction, the council tax reduction scheme has to be reviewed annually. It only goes to consultation with major changes, but we will, of course, continue that process, and it will be really, in a way, a process of continual review. The comment has been made several times about the problem with a banding system creating a cliff edge effect, and we do need to be very cognizant of that effect. So we will take all the comments that have already been made as part of the response to the consultation, and I would ask that Cabinet approve putting this consultation out. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much, Councillor Cutler. As I'm seeing no hands up, and I'm also minded of the time as well, so it's already 20 to 11, and we've got another 2 items on the agenda that we need to try and get through. Cabinet, are we content to approve the recommendations as set out on page 42, which is allowing this consultation to take place on the basis of the revised banding table? Can I have your agreement? Agreed?
Agreed.
Thank you very much. That is agreed. And thank you to all who have made comments on that item. We now move to item number 9, which is the Garrison Ground drainage improvements to sports pitches and provision of an outdoor gym. So could I please call on Councillor Prince to introduce this item, please?
Thank you, Leader. This report proposes allocating funding towards making drainage improvements in the southwest corner of the Garrison Ground, which has been a long-standing problem in terms of waterlogging and ponding, being located in a floodplain. This will benefit nearby residents, sports pitch users, and will hopefully enable the Allegra's Ambition outdoor gym to be progressed. The exact extent of the drainage work required is hard to precisely determine in terms of completely solving the problem, and recent extreme weather events experienced in Winchester and other parts of the country make it difficult to say with a degree of certainty that the works will cope with such weather events. The works will, however, be designed so that they can be extended at a later date if required, and we believe that they will enable the area to be used throughout the year in normal winter weather conditions. Discussions with Allegra's Ambition are ongoing, and I can confirm that the charity is supportive of the approach set out in this report. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Prince. I now call on Councillor Horrell, who wishes to make a representation.
Councillor Thompson, I did not register to speak on this item.
Apologies.
I think you're confusing Councillor Horrell with me, and I understand then from some angles that is an easy confusion to make.
Oh, I'm not sure I agree with that.
Someone's going to be upset about that comment.
Right, Councillor Lumbey.
Thank you, Lena. Sorry, I've now lost my notes. Thank you, and thank you again for the opportunity to speak. I will be brief, hopefully this time without the curious echoes that we had earlier on. I'm very pleased, and I know Councillor Prince as well, with the way that the new Leisure Centre is progressing and with the tremendous progress being made. Indeed, given where we are now, it is clear that if we hadn't pushed through this project at the end of our administration, in the face of opposition from the Liberal Democrats, we wouldn't be able to have a leisure centre here at all. The drainage works referred to here were, I believe, always intended to be carried out and are indeed welcomed in principle. I would suggest, however, that these are nice to have items rather than essential. That said, I have a concern which I raised at the performance panel earlier in the week. The project rather, is in delay, and we believe that the contractor is seeking additional payments. I asked about the quantum of these, but no detail has been provided. Given the financial position of the council discussed earlier, and the savings being sought elsewhere, it would appear foolish to be committing to additional non-essential expenditure until we're clearer both on the cost of the project overall and on the council's finances more generally. My question is therefore whether it's better to hold fire on this for now, rather than committing to additional expenditure at this time, whilst elsewhere hard-working staff are losing their jobs. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lumbey. I also have Councillor Reid down to speak. I don't know whether that, if that's correct or not. Councillor Reid?
Yes, thank you, Chairman. Thank you for, again, the opportunity to speak. I fully support the drainage of the playing fields. It has been a considerable problem over a considerable number of years, and it is important that we try to get the best use out of that particular parcel of land that we possibly can. So the drainage of it is absolutely fantastic. We continue to support what I believe was a long-standing commitment to do so. However, with regard to the outdoor gym equipment, I'm just wondering as to why we are contemplating putting it next door to a facility, which obviously has gym facilities in it, but why are we not putting it in the centre of town on North Walls recreation ground, where I'm sure it would get a greater use by the, shall we say, the more senior citizens in the community, and you wouldn't have to take a vehicle to get there. The location, I think, is quite important. It's got to be within easy reach, and in the centre of the city, that would be an easier reach and would obviously give an additional usage to the North Walls recreation area. The other thing that concerns me a little is the fact that many parishes over the last 5 or 6 years have actually had installed by Hampshire County Council gym equipment, outdoor gym equipment. My particular parish, Denmead, has had this for a number of years. It was installed by Hampshire County Council. However, the maintenance and inspection has been undertaken by the parish councils. I'm just wondering as to why, once again, it would appear that we are looking at the possible maintenance and inspection being done by the city council and not the town forum. Now, you know, if the town forum wants to act like a parish council, then it should take on the responsibilities of the parish council
and that is to look after equipment that is specifically for the community in which it lies, as do the parish and town councils of the district. So my problem is, yes, I support the drainage system. I do have question more as to where the location is for the gym, and the future maintenance and inspection should be undertaken by the town forum and not by the city and district as a whole. Thank you for the opportunity to speak.
Thank you very much, Councillor Reid. I wonder, I think Mr. Bradfield is on the call, and I wonder whether he might come in and respond to some of the questions posed about the project as a whole, and perhaps just touch on why Allegra's ambition is where it is.
Thank you, Leader. I'll do my best on those. I think first addressing Councillor Lumby's point about should we not hold fire, I think probably that's one for the financial strategist in the organisation. But I would say to Councillor Lumby that I think this has been long-term aspiration as part of the Bar End's design framework, and it's all about making that whole area work really well. So it's the leisure centre, it's the running track, it's the garrison ground, it's KGV, so it's very much a holistic approach. I'll leave perhaps Mr. Botham or others just to comment on should we save that money or not, but I think it is something that the council has had a consistently long-term ambition to do, and will make the best use of that playing area. I think Councillor Reid's point about Allegra's ambition and why is that location, to be honest, I think that probably predates my knowledge, but certainly in my time it's always been the case again to complement the use of the leisure facility indoors with an outdoor facility too. So again, it's making that area a true sports and leisure park with a lot of choices for both residents of the city, excuse me, and residents of the district and others who will be attracted to that complex, because it will be a fantastic complex of a regional attraction. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you very much. Members of Cabinet, any comments to make? Are we happy to move to the recommendations, which are on page 217 of the agenda pack, 217 across to 218? Are we agreed, Cabinet? Agreed?
Agreed.
Agreed. Thank you very much. Thank you. Cabinet, I'm conscious of the time. We have a couple more items to get through. The first one is item number 10, the grant review update. So we're likely to run over slightly, but I hope you can all bear with us. I do think it's within the interests of the council that we get the business dealt with today rather than rescheduling another meeting. So we move to our agenda item 10, the grant review update, and I call on Councillor Prince again to move the paper, please.
Thank you, Leader. I'll seek to move the paper yet again. Firstly, this Cabinet report, which I hope you've all had a chance to read, provides an update on the outcomes achieved as a result of our programme of grant funding to the voluntary and community sectors. In particular, I would like to draw your attention to the grants we have allocated to the strategic and priority funds, which are set out in sections 11.2 to 11.8. These grants are now in the second year of their 3-year funding cycle, so this is not the time for detailed scrutiny of each individual organisation, but an opportunity to reflect on the combined outcomes achieved through the funding. We have 15 core fund organisations, and section 11.6 details the huge amount that was delivered during the last financial year. It is also very important to reflect on the vital role that a number of these organisations played during the COVID-19 outbreak, responding and supporting some very vulnerable service users. In 2019/20, the total awarded was £538,627, with an approach of gradually reducing funding over the 3-year period in order to reduce the organisation's reliance on the council's funding. The small grant programme was delivered in a more interactive, proactive way, with local ward members more involved in the process and playing an active role in panels to meet applicants and discuss their applications. I know this was something that I particularly felt was worthwhile. I went out to many parishes and met many councillors who were there asking the questions of their residents and organisations who were seeking grants. We are keen to deliver this year's programme in the same way, though social distancing has impacted arrangements and officers are also reviewing the impact of COVID to ensure that small grants programme most effectively supports those activities and organisations most in need. The Council's crowdfunding platform launched in February this year, which was a major event, but unfortunately the COVID crisis has again made an impact. We believe that crowdfunding is a great way for organisations and projects to raise funding. It's about raising funding together in these difficult times, and there are notable success stories. So officers are working with funding to encourage fundraising activity on the platform. There is plenty of support to organisations should they wish to take up this activity, with the council offering up to £2,000 of match funding, but applicants can make use of the platform to raise funds even if the council chooses not to match fund their projects. In summary, a very positive report that reflects the vital role the voluntary sector plays in supporting the people in our district that need help the most. It's very important to take time out to look at this report, because what it really does is it says we are involved, organisations are involved, and we're all moving in the same direction. I appreciate it and thank you for those who have put it together.
Thank you very much, Councillor Prince. I have two councillors who have indicated they wish to speak, and the first up, hope I'm correct, is Councillor Miller. Councillor Miller.
Thank you. Thank you very much for allowing me to speak. We are an unusual council in still making grants, as many other councils have stopped these, as the last peer review showed. I'm delighted to see that the small grants will continue, as the report shows they are of great use to many organisations across the district. I hope we can advertise it well enough to ensure that this is well known across the whole district, as apart from the funding the CAB and Homestyle, all the other grants are Winchester City based, and the small grants are the only ones that benefit the rural areas of the council. Hopefully we'll be much use of these small grants to the many organisations that do a great job rurally and are struggling with COVID-19 and probably having to adjust to it. So I welcome the report and the small grants in particular.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Councillor Miller, for your contribution and your support. I now call on Councillor Horrell.
Thank you, Chair, for allowing me to speak again this morning, and thank you for the report updating us on the revised grant programme. We are indeed fortunate to still offer grants as a council, and the organisations, especially those smaller ones around our district, appreciate the grant allocation, and in many cases our cash has made a significant difference to their ability to operate and deliver services. The introduction of councillors to the review process is to be welcomed. It allows us to advocate for our communities and better understand their activities, and I wholeheartedly support the intention to continue with that level of involvement. I also would recommend we restart the programme as soon as possible and would ask that it is added to the recommendations today. It would be easy to action remotely. We are all used to video conferencing and our residents are too. Indeed, it is a time when organisations might really appreciate the opportunity to pitch for funds. However, I do disagree with the thought that we would prioritise ongoing operations as detailed in 11.14 in the report instead of one-off requests. I think the organisations should tell us what they really need and for officers and councillors to do what they've done in the last year to assess the requests and make the decisions accordingly. I would also like to ask Councillor Prince what is meant by the comment in 11.16 where it says the priorities would be agreed on an annual basis. Where and when will this be done? Who will do it? And how can councillors contribute? Excuse me. The other thing that I think is important is how are we going to improve our communications efforts to spread the word about the Small Grants Fund? I don't see any action indicated on this today, and I think this is an essential effort. And I would ask the comms team to work with us to produce videos, infographics, other materials that councillors can push out to their various media opportunities in their communities. And can I ask the portfolio holder to help us to understand his intention with the large grants, excuse me, to the theatre and citizens' advice going forward? Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Horrell. Councillor Porter, you have your hand up.
Thank you. Councillor Miller made the comment that it was only Winchester charities that actually were supported. Can I just say that there is still the opportunity for people to apply to SIL for right across the whole district if they believe that their charitable organisation has an opportunity to extend facilities and opportunities right across the district. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Councillor Prince, are you able to come back on any of those questions that were posed?
There are a few interesting questions there.
Yes.
And firstly, I thank. Sorry.
Do go ahead.
Thank you. Thank you, and thank you for your support. I appreciated the comments that were made. They were very useful, and I've written them down. In terms of the theatre, especially, this is something which we are monitoring very closely and seeing which direction the theatre is moving, and in particular the Arts Council grants. The theatre in its new format, both indoor and outdoor, and how will it react to the new, dare I say, rule of 6. We've got to bear all those things in mind. The theatre is something that is important to many of us. I do know that, and we're keeping regular contact with the team there. In terms of the small grants, that has resonated as something really important from the comments that has been made, and the message that has come out is we must communicate that better. We've tried to communicate via, dare I say, ward councillors and others to encourage their parishes, to encourage organisations to apply for various things. But this maybe needs more work on it. We will do that, and I believe that is something that we must take forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Prince. Mr. Bradfield, do you have any comments to make? You're flashing on my screen for some reason.
I demuted in anticipation, Leader, but I haven't got anything strategically to add to Councillor Prince. I wonder though, Sue Robbins is on the line, who's closer to a lot of the detail on these grants, and she may be able to answer some of Councillor Horrell's more detailed points.
Thank you very much. Ms Robbins, are you there? Can you help, please? Sue Robbins?
I think Melissa's on the call as well.
Oh, sorry, it took me a moment to demute.
Yes.
Sorry about that. Yes, certainly with regard to some of the comments made, we will be looking at how we can promote better, and I support the comments made about the small grants. I think with regard to the grants going forward, this was very much a report about the achievements and the delivery and the outcomes of the past year's programme. And we will, of course, be looking at how we fund the other organisations going forward for next year. Some of those already have grant agreements in place, because under the review, as if you remember, we had a longer grant period for those individual organisations. And I think we've already touched on the theatre, which quite rightly is currently under review and being monitored. Thank you.
I think we dealt with them.
Okay, thank you very much, and thank you for that. Cabinet members, any further questions, or can we go to the recommendations? Or is there any debate? No? Okay, I think we've... Yeah, okay, I think we'll go straight to the recommendations then on page 235 of the agenda pack. Are we agreed with those recommendations?
Agreed.
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 Agreed. Thank you very much. Thank you. So those recommendations are agreed. We just have one item now left on our agenda, which is item 11, and it's just to note the forward plan of key decisions. Hope you've all had a chance to look at it. Can we note that report, please?
Noted.
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 Thank you very much. Thank you. Well, we've made up time quite considerably. I thought we would be running over quite a lot more than we have done. So thank you to everybody. Thank you to all who've made contributions, and thank you to Cabinet. And we'll see you all again soon. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Leader.
Thank you.